practicing Buddhism in the West, we often like to think that we are busier and more stressed than our ancestors ever were. In the West, we also seem to think that the arrival of Buddhism poses particular problems for us. Due to cultural differences here, we'll look at what has changed, what is the same, how we can deal with these issues, and the ageless practices that suit all times and cultures. Are there specific difficulties in the modern West for practicing Buddhists? Is there anything special about the practice of Buddhism in the West that is different from the practice of Buddhism anywhere else at any time? Is there anything special about us? Why would we even be interested in knowing if there is something special about us? There could several reasons. Some people might face some difficulties they think are specific to our time, and want to know how to overcome them. Others might be looking for an excuse not to have to practice as hard. As people have done at other times, they're looking for a bargain. They want enlightenment at a cheap price. Putting that motivation aside, let's look more seriously at whether there are any specific difficulties that we face. If we're involved in the Buddhist path, one of the most basic things you have to try and develop is the awareness that there's nothing particularly special about us. We can't really say that. At present in the West, people have more anger, greed, or selfishness than people have elsewhere in the world, or have had in the past. Throughout the universe and throughout time, people have been working with the same disturbing emotions, so there's nothing special about now. Fashionable Buddhism. Suppose, however, after a period of testing, we choose a Buddhist tradition, center, and teacher to study with, then we face another issue. There are so many different levels of practicing Buddhism, and a huge number of ways in which we could go about applying it to our daily life. How do we start? There's the very superficial level, which doesn't do much to change us internally. Then there's the deeper level, in which we actually work on ourselves, with the minimal aim of improving the quality of our lives and avoiding making it worse. Whether we will go on to aim for liberation and enlightenment depends on how we develop. We can't possibly aim for those lofty goals from the very start. Most of us don't have the slightest idea even of what liberation and enlightenment mean. In the beginning, many people are attracted to the superficial level, and so they deal with the external. By this I mean that they will get a red string to put around their neck or wrist, or both. They will wear a mala, a rosary of beads, and sametamase it while mumbling something. They have a good supply of incense and candles, and all the proper meditation cushions, Tibetan painting and pictures, and eventually perhaps they will even start to wear some sort of Tibetan clothing. They sit very solemnly in this almost Hollywood setting, but have no idea what to do. I remember when I first went to India in 1969. It was the height of the hippie era, and there were very few Westerners there at the time. But many of those that were there dressed fully in exotic Tibetan robes and costumes, which I remember being rather judgmental of. I thought it was a bite offensive to the Tibetan. These Westerners were just mimicking and copying them. Then I asked the Tibetan monk I was living with what he thought of these Westerners going around dressed in Tibetan clothes. He replied, with a very helpful answer, "We think that they like Tibetan clothes. There was no judgment there whatsoever." Whether we are judgmental of that or not, just changing our clothes or wearing a rosary and many blessing cords doesn't really change us very much, does it? Internally, it doesn't really do anything. It doesn't bring more blessings. Our Buddhist practice need to be internal. Personal transformation. Whether in the West or in a traditional Buddhist society, what Buddhist practice requires is working on ourselves. We have to transform ourselves, which is not something done through ritual. It's easy to learn to do. A ritual and recite mumbo-jumbo in a foreign language that we don't understand at all. But this doesn't transform us. We will still get angry, we will still get attached, and will still not get on with our parents. His Holiness the Dalai Lama always says that practicing these rituals, when you have no idea of what you are doing, is not going to get you far at all. Nagayuna, Aryadeva, and all the great India masters have said that the practice of Buddhism comes down to taming your mind. This means first of all leaning the teaching, the method of how to deal with disturbing emotions and problematic situations, and how to analyze the various experiences we have. We keep mindful so that we remember the teachings and apply them as and when we need. In this way, they will help us to overcome at least the ordinary problems of life, like anger, worry, and nervousness, sickness, old age, relaxation-ship problems, all of this stuff and more. So we need to work on and improve our personalities and basic attitudes toward life to transform ourselves. This requires a tremendous amount of work and is not easy to do. We need patience, courage, and perseverance. Our tendency in the West is to want things cheaply, easily, and above all, quickly. We want all the teachings, instantly want to gain all wonderful things we read about that a Buddha attains, and so on, with the least amount of work as possible.